The Y Factor is proudly brought to you by Flames Steakhouse Pizza and Ribs in Campsie, the best steak you'll ever have.
Welcome to the Voice of Islam Ave.
87.6 FM.
It's Az here.
And Sema.
And in case you think that our show has been hacked by aliens, no, it has not. We've just decided to let on two very special individuals to discuss issues close to their heart.
That's right. Welcome to another episode of The Y Factor, guys. Today is Thursday, the 10th of May. And we've decided to mix up the episode for you a bit. So we've got some special guests to discuss some very, very pertinent, highly pertinent issues, okay?
Earth-shattering.
Earth-shattering, like, you know.
Mind-blowing.
Top of the agenda stuff, right?
Capital.
So, inshallah, yeah, we've got the ladies on here to discuss some various topics, inshallah. We're trying new format, so for the show, let us know your thoughts on Facebook. You can also email us at theyfactor@live.com.au. And yeah, we'll get kick-started. So, ladies, what's the first discussion topic for this week?
Is it Pride and Prejudice, or is it adaptations versus book novels?
That's right. By popular request, we've got the ladies on too. They had a very heated discussion
Popular
debate.
request of themselves, you mean?
I know.
They had a very heated discussion debate. You had the Sydney female audience, torn between whether or not it's adaptations or the actual books. Now, honestly, personally, I feel like, when you read a book and you read it with passion and you've got, you just savor every single word, and then they make it into a movie, right? Because when you're reading a book, you're imagining in your head, you've got the characters and everything, and then they make it into a book, and either the character is just ridiculous or they just ruin it for you, and you can just never appreciate the book in the same way again.
What are you talking about? Bella was amazing.
No.
We're not going near Twilight, please.
I'm joking. I think, to be honest, Twilight is a guilty pleasure, but it really is badly written. I think everyone can agree upon that. Are we all agreeing that Twilight is a badly written book?
Excuse me, she needs to learn how to use adjectives. I mean, when you use, sparkling, his skin was sparkling a million times. But anyway, the show is beyond discussing Twilight. We're actually of a higher caliber. So we're going to stick to the good old classics, all right? Yes, we are, indeed. Okay?
Indeed.
So, Sema, what do you reckon? Like Jane Austen, the book or the movie?
Well, I completely disagree with you when you say that you don't like film adaptations. I am like a movie fan myself, but I don't see how it takes away anything from the book. For instance, if I loved the book and the movie came out and it's terrible, I still love the book. The book is still the same. Like, why wouldn't you want to see your characters to life? Like, why wouldn't you want to see Elizabeth Bennet, Mr. Darcy
Because when you're reading the book, you're imagining in your own head, right? And then when they make it into the movie, it's whatever the director's imagining it. And sometimes...
How strong is your imagination? Just keep it the way it is.
You know what? Harry Potter, the movies, were just not up to the standards of the book. The books were amazing. Yeah. And then the movies with Daniel Radcliffe's wooden acting. He was a friend. Like, he was just so a troll. He was just so wooden.
If you want to kill Harry, you'll have to kill us too.
Yeah.
Not even that, but I think sometimes...
I think it took 5 movies for him to finally, get into it. It was like before, it was like playtime. It was like he was going to childcare centre, I'm going to a movie set. Lord of the Rings is an example of the movies being just as great as the books.
I fell asleep.
I think better than the books a lot would.
Well, a lot of people struggled to read Lord of the Rings because it's such an impressively written, they're just an amazing saga, and it's just so in depth. And he created this entire. Well, he even created another language, Elvish, and I went into the movie thinking, oh my gosh, is it going to be just as intense as the books? And then the movies just swept me away. I was in Middle Earth. They have to be one of my favourite films of all time, I have to say.
But I think, okay, so that's imaginative stuff, right? So you can say that
fantasy,
fantasy, The Hunger Games, blah, blah, blah. Sometimes when you have books that are based on the fiction but based on real life, so for example, something like The Kite Runner or all those movies that they have about the Middle East and, Behind the Veil, Under the Veil.
Can I just have a mini rant? I haven't seen The Kite Runner, nor have I read it, because I found The Thousand Splendid Suns to be terrible. It was Like, just so terrible, like mind-blowingly terrible. Everybody should read it just to see how terrible.
Away. Why did you find it terrible?
Like, I can go on forever.
List 3 reasons why you disliked it.
Is it the whole Orientalist thing? You know how they wrote that book, Real Bad Arabs, and they use that pun, R-E-E-L, as in like a film reel, where the author went through all the movies where Arabs and Muslims were depicted as evil, terrorists, and and I think that. I think there just isn't a tradition of Middle Easterners or Arabs or Muslims just having positive.
What are you talking about, bro? The combination.
The combination with the horsehair mullets.
No, but seriously, what I mean, for example, with the Kite Runner, right? I do agree with the very, very Oriental. Well, the author himself.
It's Orientalism.
It is Orientalism, but for example, I felt with the Kite Runner. When you read the book, it does have a lot of those exaggerated, like, oppressive, shackled undertones. But at the same time, you actually appreciated the culture. And I think it was kind of an eye-opener for those who don't, for example, know Afghan culture or Islamic culture or, things like that. But I think when they adapt it into a movie, it becomes very Hollywoodized. Is that even a word?
Yeah.
So they need to fit it into the 90 minutes, 60 minutes. So it actually reinforces every single stereotype. Whereas if you had read the book, it's actually not that stereotypical. And I find that...
Well, 1,000 Splendid Suns was stereotypical. Very stereotypical. Like, and the writing was bad to me. I don't understand. I'll just give you one example. The author just seemed to describe the most insignificant things. For instance, at one point, the old man, he started to describe a vein protruding out of his navel. Okay, this vein had no significance to the storyline. It did not give him superpowers. It did not explode. Nothing happened to this vein. He just chose to gross everyone out by describing a vein. And everybody seemed to lose their teeth. Like, Tarek lost his teeth and
Sema,
Layla's teeth went yellow.
Critical analysis at its high.
Well, these are just the mini things. I can go on. Like, people who say, read it, it's by an Islamic author. The book is completely un-Islamic.
I don't think it's an Islamic author per se. I mean, he does have a Muslim background, Khaled Hosseini. But
that's what people say. Like, that's why I read it. People were like, support him, he's Muslim. And then when I read it, I was just like...
I guess it's okay for us because we can read it and appreciate the complexities. Okay, maybe this isn't exactly what Islam says, but the problem is when you get people reading it who have no background knowledge of Islam and they'll take it as gospel, like this is what Muslims are like. That's when the problems come into it.
All those Iranian stoning movies and the princesses from Saudi Arabia, running away.
That's a cash cow. They know. They only do it to make money.
The other day I was actually online, really bored trolling the net, and then on the Atheist Society of Australia or New South Wales or whatever, they had a section about the patriarchy in religions, and it was going through an analysis of Islam, Judaism and Christianity. And you know how usually with like really, really awesome articles, like academic caliber articles, on the bottom they've got, peer reference journals. Yeah. So if you wanted to, pursue the project, you can actually, have a look. Seriously, read their recommendation list. It's like Ayan Hissi Ali.
Oh, you
then
serious?
They had Irshad Manji. And then they had, all the books had veil, behind the veil, under the veil, on top of the veil.
Well, they clearly had an agenda if they're going to use those sort of sources.
And you just think, seriously, what the hell's up with it? All right, moving along from books and movies. As we said, we're going to, it's a conversation.
By the way, the 1995 adaptation of Pride and Prejudice, the BBC one, is way better than the Keira Knightley version.
Disagree. How can you possibly think that the 1995 version of Elizabeth Bennet was better? Like, she was a zombie. She was just sitting there, especially in the breakup scene where
I'm sorry. A pouting Keira Knightley is so much better acting.
I don't even understand where
Jennifer Earley was sublime. Colin Firth was amazing. That other guy, I don't even remember his name. That's how significant he is.
Matthew McFadden.
He just had a very deep voice.
And amazing, very deep voice.
That's his only quality.
Darcy voice.
I can't even believe we're having this conversation right now. This is just so sad. It's absolutely sad that
she was in the breakup scene, not the breakup scene, the proposal scene, it was a rejection scene. She's sitting down in the 1995 version and she's like a zombie saying, "Oh, Mr. Darcy."
Are you kidding me? She gave the greatest speech
No, she
of all
didn't.
time.
And she has this weird haircut.
She ripped him apart.
She didn't. She just sat down and spoke like a zombie.
You want to.
Oh, well, here we go.
Wait. She's supposed to feel passionate hate for him and he's supposed to be passionately in love, but it just seemed like they were just sitting down on... No, Colin Firth was good, but...
Colin Firth was amazing. She was amazing.
No, she wasn't. She was a zombie.
Okay,
She's like, you're mistaken, Mr. Darcy. The mood of your declaration merely spared me any concern I might have felt in refusing you had you behaved in a more gentlemanlike manner. You could not have made me the offer of your hand in any possible way that would have tempted me to accept it. From the very beginning, your manners impressed me with fullest belief of your arrogance, your conceit, and your selfish disdain for the feelings of others. I had not known you a month before I felt you were the last man in the world whom I could ever marry.
Okay,
Come on, man. She did that awesome.
If you had to say it in like a Muslim context.
Wait, can
Fully,
I
bro.
say that
Look, I don't want to marry you, alright? Look, go away. Look, you're so like arrogant and horrible. Look, leave me alone, okay?
All right, ladies, seriously, we're gonna leave this.
No, I
discussion
have
here.
to say the Keira Knightley version.
Go on.
Okay,
Sema.
she was like, and this coming from a true gentleman. From the first moment I met you, your arrogance, conceit, your selfish disdain for the feelings of others made me realise that you are the last man in the world I could ever be prevailed upon to marry.
All right.
And
we'll
then
leave
she
it up
said,
to-
try wearing a corset.
Okay. All right, ladies. Let's just leave it up to the audience to decide which they think is better.
I'm
Moving
right.
on to the next topic of discussion. Okay, so we were just, inshallah, later on the episode, we'll be speaking about schools and NAPLAN and things like that. In China, a teacher has actually hooked up his students to IV drips in an attempt to get them to have more energy while studying. Now, teenagers in this, I honestly cannot pronounce the high school.
Zhao Gan, I believe.
Thank you. Basically, were studying while attached to IV fluids. It is believed the students were preparing for the National College entrance exam when the photos were taken. Education's bosses have defended the unusual practice, with the director of the Office of Academic Affairs telling China News 24 that the amino acid administered in the drips helped the students study.
I think it's a great idea.
Brilliant.
I think
The Chinese always come up with everything, don't they?
yeah, the Muslim community need to adopt this. Really, like I think
they have. Sema,
who
when
needs
you went to
Red Bull?
Malik Fahad, did they have
Very
beds
close
on
to it.
IV?
Very. No, I'm kidding. No, they
In
didn't.
Malikbad, they provide the beds as well.
Yes. See, we're high class.
No, but I think it's better than Red Bull, isn't it?
I mean, amino acids can't be bad, can they, Zainab? You had a medical background for a year or so.
Well, I mean, if the nutrients are going directly into their veins, right, it's instant satisfaction. It's like, oh, amino acids, yeah, I like that.
Acid, yeah.
Yeah. So I can't see how that could be a bad thing, right?
Well,
No, let's just think about it. It's completely unethical.
But what's unethical about it if they're getting extra energy for studying? I mean, we've all been
It's
studying.
IV drips, like...
Yeah.
it's just
an
so
instant
hilarious.
boost.
It's just hilarious.
Do you think it's more about the mode? Like, it's because it's like IV drips. And that's usually associated with like hospitals and things like that. I mean, imagine they gave them like pills, you know.
Or energy bars. Like if they gave them
Yeah.
like the same amount of like energy
Amino
in a
acids,
bar,
yeah.
nobody would care just because
That's
the
true.
image is too confronting for people when they see it.
But do they need to really put in a drip? That's
It's
just
instant.
like
that's
a little
that's
bit
the great thing about a
insane.
drip. I mean, if you've ever been on one, you'll know how great it is.
Woo.
So
Yeah, but this is China we're talking about, you know.
All right. Well, speaking of medicines and the like, South Korea has actually discovered more than 17,000 pills which were smuggled to the country, which were.
I can't believe this is actually a real story. When I saw the headline, I didn't believe it myself, but here it is. These pills are actually consisting of crushed dead babies.
I cannot believe this.
No, get it. The pills are viewed as a miracle cure for all ailments, but unsurprisingly, they were harmful.
And so where they get this from, it's the baby corpses are from China, and apparently these are fetuses that have been aborted or delivered stillborn. And so they buy the corpses, they store it in refrigerators, and then they take it into clinics where they put it into a medical drying microwave, and then they crush it up into a powder once it's dry
Oh my gosh.
to make these pills.
The pills are actually 99.7% human last year. I'm actually going to post the link on the Y Factor page, so do have a look at it. Now, apparently these tiny corpses are actually bought by corrupt medical staff, bought and sold by corrupt medical staff. And these discoveries were actually last August, and they even shocked the most hardened custom agents.
That's just too disturbing. I mean, what do you say? Like,
Yeah,
it's
I'm kind of just speechless about that one.
Yeah,
just-
because apparently there's a lot of like, oh, this sounds horrible, but there's actually a big supply of these fetuses in China because, you know, it's a problem in China that because they have the one-child policy,
Yeah.
there's a lot of babies that get aborted during pregnancy, and so there's actually quite a big supply, so to speak, of these baby fetuses.
On taking it from another perspective, I think it's also this whole, like, you know, alternative medicine approach on things. Now, I know, for example, I honestly cannot remember the study, but apparently, like, placenta and the umbilical cord has this, like, magical healing powers or something.
Yeah.
And they actually use them in creams.
Yeah, I've seen placenta cream. You can get them in Australia. You can get, but not obviously human placenta, but I've seen, like, platypus placenta cream when you go to the souvenir stores, and you can see, like, placenta cream around. I mean, yeah, I've actually seen them in the store being sold retail.
Yeah, I mean, there's some crazy beliefs out there. There's this one which actually is horrible to mention, as horrible as this story, where in some parts of Africa and even I believe other parts of the world, people who suffer from AIDS believe they can cure themselves by having relations with a virgin, and that often means that babies and children are taken because of their supposed healing powers to cure people of AIDS. So.
I think
that's just really depressing.
I'm shocked about that.
Yeah.
I know.
I think the issue of alternative medicines and the lengths that people actually go to justify what they actually believe are, you know, healing powers and things.
But don't forget, a lot of these places that sort of do focus on alternative. Well, I'm not. It's a tough one, but I feel like, for instance, my sister lives in Turkey, and because it's so expensive to go see a doctor, they do look at alternatives. And so I think for a lot of people, it's like they have no option. You know?
I mean, as everybody knows, if you're Arab, like, you can't escape from your mother's olive oil. And,
exactly.
You know,
yeah. Olive oil cures everything. Do you know?
Olive oil and honey. No, I'm not disputing that. Or even, for example, you know, like garlic. You know, vitamin C for immunity, things like that. That's obviously normal. I mean, no one's saying it. But sometimes when the alternative niche market becomes really, really alternative, and you honestly think, what's the fine line between wackoness and, you know, disputes? And sometimes, you know, when something's so outrageous, it's actually believable. Like, the more outrageous, the more believable it becomes.
Well, there's the prophet's medicine, and there's a lot of, you know, people look at, you know, the books like Shifat, and people are getting into that again. I mean, they had that exhibition about the Rasul Sallam recently, and one of the most popular stands or stalls was actually the Prophet's medicine section, where they actually had samples and people could smell and try different things, etc.
I know. Even the practice of cupping, where they actually let out blood from, you know, various body parts and things like that. Yeah, I know, like, a registered nurse that actually kind of, you know, does it. Yeah, and apparently it's got, like, you know, I've
heard it, like, helps with migraines or whatever. But obviously we're not doctors, so we're not, you know, we're not dispensing any advice to anyone. Yeah,
but
exactly.
I guess for everything that people take as an established health scientific fact, there's going to be people who question it. Like, for example, look at the debate over vaccines at the moment. There's this growing number of people who are really anti-vaccination. And so vaccination, 50 years ago, was heralded as this breakthrough of science, the triumph of science, we're going to eradicate disease. And now people are starting to say, no, vaccination actually causes disease. So it's just interesting.
I think with alternative medicine and Western medicine, I feel like there's, you know, there are always going to be people who want to take advantage. And so, you know, obviously they want to make a buck at the end of the day. And so some people will do things that are unethical and whatnot to sort of increase their profit margin.
All right, ladies, we're just going to take a short break and we'll be back. Hold the thought.
Hey, Jamal, where can you get the best steak and ribs?
At Flames.
Have they got any deals on?
Yeah, mate. Specials on Thursdays, pizza and pastas, only $10.
$10?
Yeah, $10. $10. And 20% off everything else.
Only on Thursdays and Sundays.
Where at?
At Flames.
396 Beamish Street, Campsie.
Be there.
The Y Factor.
Be there. Be there. At Flames? Well, darling, how are you supposed to find a husband if you do not go to Flames? And actually, maybe you shouldn't eat too much pizza.
Yeah, and on that note, pizza. Okay, crash diets. You know, there's always a new crash diet out. And so the latest one is where they're actually telling people stuff that is contrary to, I guess, traditional dieting thought. And that is one, for example, that you should skip breakfast. And, you know, we're always being told that breakfast is so important. You have to have breakfast to kickstart your metabolism. But with this latest diet, which is actually talked about in the book 6 Weeks to OMG. they claim that certain fruits instantly block your fat loss, small frequent meals are damaging, juices and smoothies cause overeating, and that broccoli carbs can be worse than those from Coke.
What's this sauce?
Can I just say that I follow that philosophy where I don't really eat breakfast because I just don't have the time, and I'm not really much of a fruit eater, and I'm pretty much fat, so I don't really believe this diet actually works. I'm just putting that out there, you know. Perhaps you should continue eating fruit and vegetables and maybe exercise and do all the stuff that I don't do, and then, you know, inshallah, you'll come out healthy and fabulous.
Have you heard about that Paleolithic diet, which is supposedly only eating stuff that were around in the Paleolithic age? So just like nuts and seeds and stuff that was like
what's that diet where they only eat what's fallen off trees? Like you can't even pick it off a tree.
Newton diet.
It's like bada boom. Well done.
Good one.
No, it's like fruit something diet where they only literally eat what has fallen from the tree because they don't even believe in like harming the plant by like picking off the tree. Yeah.
You know, actually, taking an Islamic aspect, look at this. I was listening to a lecture by Sheikh Hamza Yusuf, and he was just discussing the ethics of eating. And he said every time eating is mentioned in the Quran, it always says halal and tayyiba. Halal means like obviously, you know, lawful, and tayyiba means, and he was translating tayyiba not to just be like good or tasty as we generally translate it, but actually beneficial and nutritious, right? Yeah. So he goes, if you actually eat food that's bad for you and bad for your body, you're going against the Quranic injunction that the food has to be nutritious, right? And he was saying, think about it. He goes,
oh boy, I'm in trouble.
There are many hadith, you know, where the Prophet ﷺ says, you know, a couple of morsels of food keep someone alive, right? Yeah. And you think, you know, we're told...
Or to keep your back straight.
Exactly, back straight, right? And we're told how many servings do you need a day? But he was saying, think about it. If you actually look at the nutrition content of the actual food you're eating, then it's not so much about how much you eat; it's about the nutritious content of it.
Maybe the next crash diet should be the Islamic method of dieting. You know, 1/3 food, 1/3 water, 1/3 air. I mean, isn't that a perfect recipe for dieting right
what
there?
What he said in the lecture, which was totally wow, like it dumbfounded me. He goes, everybody always mentions the hadith 1/3, 1/3, 1/3. He goes, that's actually the second part of the hadith. He goes, if you go to Bukhari, get the hadith as a whole. Yeah. The hadith starts off that saying, son of Adam needs only a couple of morsels of flesh to keep his back straight. However, if he isn't going to, then it should be a third. So a third, which we think is like we can't even do that, is the exception to the rule, which is just totally like, subhanAllah, it's very interesting.
I know. Like for me, it's just like a third McDonald's, a third Pizza Hut, a third, you know.
Third Flames.
Flames. Is this like, you know, Watches Anonymous or something on air?
I know. This is Dr. Phil.
Hey, this isn't anonymous. This is going to air, people, so don't air your dirty food secret too.
Yeah.
Well, speaking of food, a study in England by the University of, I hate this word,
Leicester
has actually found that Indian and Pakistani communities in the region had a 70% less chance of contracting bowel or colon cancer, and what the study attributed it to.
You know what? This is a lovely conversation we're having today. We're talking about dead babies. We're talking about colon and bowel cancer.
We said we're trying a new format.
Students with IV drips.
We're trialing a new format for the show, so we'll see the backlash and the feedback we get. But back to what I was saying, right? Apparently, the curry spices used in these Pakistani and Indian dishes actually 70%, reduce the chance of bowel or colon cancer.
Wow.
Because of what's that called? Curcumin?
Cumin or?
Cumin.
Curcumin.
Cumin with a cur in front of it.
Oh, wow.
Curcumin.
It's okay.
Apparently.
Maybe that's the scientific.
But how legit is this?
This is the scientific study.
This is being reported by ABC, and the Professor Stewart is a leading international team. They tested the power of curry on 40 patients with advanced bowel cancer at the General Hospital. They were given 2 capsules of curcumin a day, equivalent to eating 2 large curries.
This friend of yours, do they wear oil of Olay twice a day or something?
Documentary. It's not my friend.
Oh wow, okay.
I don't know. I just think it's interesting. I mean, with diets and stuff.
I like Indian food, so I'm gonna
take it. Actually,
I'm gonna take on this challenge.
My mum, I don't even know if I should be quoting her on air, but she's always like, apparently she read. I don't know where she gets her information from, but apparently like a lot of spices and stuff, especially for for the throat, is negative. And I don't know what she was saying. She showed me this whole article article about how it causes inflammation and things like that, which is interesting because you know what? I feel like these days, you just open the internet and there's so many research articles that totally 180 degrees contradict each other.
Yeah.
And just the article we said before about have breakfast, don't have breakfast, eat chili, don't eat chili, do these, don't do that. I don't know, it's a very confusing world.
I think it's information bombardment, and especially with diet, people don't know what to do because we're given all these conflicting messages. But then I think at the end of the day, it comes down to just, eating moderately and exercising. I mean, you can't go wrong with that, can you?
Exactly. And I'm really skeptical of these sort of the research that comes out because you got to look at who's funding this research in the first place. A lot of times it's just the company that's trying to promote their own. You know what I mean? It's like tobacco companies trying to, who buy out scientists to say that, hey, tobacco isn't bad for you, which is what they used to do. And so I'm very skeptical about this sort of research.
Yeah,
I know, but this one's from the University of Leicester, but I'm talking about research in general. Like, you have to sort of look at the sources and stuff
also,
as well.
I hate, for example, articles in SMH and like the Asian stuff that say a study was found to show not
What
listing
study?
the name, not listing who it was, not listing the
A study on Facebook.
No, regarding the pharmaceutical industry, I know I've seen a lot of studies where they claim, this medication lowers blood pressure. It does lower blood pressure, but to some extent that it's so insignificant, you have to actually look at the actual data, really. Like, we've had lectures on this where you actually look at the data and you realize that the medication is actually, it's claiming to be more than other medications.
Isn't that what sleeping pills? I mean, I remember I had a friend, he was saying at a lecture, the lecturer actually took a whole tub of sleeping pills in front of them, just showing that you have to actually look at the grams of the active ingredients.
Brave man, but I'm not sure about that one. But what are the sleeping pills? Like, is he taking valerian, which is
That's what I'm saying. I don't actually remember what the thing is, but it just depends. You have to look at the active ingredients and the amount of active, which brings me to my next argument, Sema, that pharmaceutical companies are redundant, because if we all
Don't
just
get me
eat
started.
honey and olive oil.
Hey,
Actually,
pharmaceutical
speaking of
companies can
pharmaceutical
be,
companies-
there are like a lot of people are against the pharmaceutical companies these
Because they're
days.
pure evil, that's why.
Exactly.
Okay, what's this
I
thing
agree
about
with you,
generic
Zeina.
versus non-generic?
Okay, generic versus...
It sounds like it's like, when someone offers you, do you want no frills chocolate or Lint? And you're like, excuse me, like, obviously there's a perk in this, like there's something fishy involved.
No,
so when you go to the
generic
pharmacy and they go, oh, do you want like generic? And you're like, what the hell's generic?
Okay, they're exactly the same thing, generic and normal medicine. These people who say, I don't want generic, it didn't work. Okay, maybe it's like psychological pain that it didn't work for you, but if you look at the active ingredients, it's exactly the same. But it's better off if you're giving the money to actual, like, for instance, the generic brand's always Australian.
Yeah.
Like in this country, basically. And when you're buying the generic, the money's staying inside the country. If you're buying the overseas one, it is more expensive.
It's an Australian to buy. The brand names.
Basically, it's a win-win situation. You're getting it cheaper. Not all of them, but you're getting it cheaper. The pharmacist is like...
I always go for generic. They're always like, oh, it's $50 cheaper. I'm like, well, I'll take that.
I've read an article completely bashing pharmacists, saying, they're not concentrating on the health of the patients. They're just pushing generic brands. This has no relation to the health of the patient. It's exactly the same medication, just a different brand.
Yeah, but you can't underestimate the placebo effect. Like,
Exactly,
I read this book and they had a study, another study. But anyway, this study showed that people actually, compared to like different brands of paracetamol, people felt better when they took the more expensive brand as opposed to the cheaper brand. And so you can't underestimate the power
Not just
of this
that,
stuff.
but attending, mothers' meetings, if I feel like skipping uni and gate crashing on them, all they think about...
As one does.
As one does, when you want to get fed and you haven't eaten for a week. Seriously, you know what they talk about? Like, they talk about the doctors they go to and stuff, and if a doctor didn't prescribe medicine, they just hate on the doctor and never go back there again. So it's medicine has just become... It's like, it's not so much about...
It's a quick fix solution.
Exactly. Sema, you work at the pharmacy that's actually introduced halal products.
medicine.
So what's this about? Like, it's not just, it's not just...
Right.
Our halal meat, now even our medicines become halal.
Bloody Muslims.
Taking over with their Sharia.
I do work pharmacy for less in Lakemba, and basically it's halal certified. There are some medicines with active ingredient. Like, there's actually a new book out called The Halal Index. It came out this year, and it specifies exactly which ingredients are derived from pork or not. So what the pharmacy has done, they've actually stuck like stickers on the ones which have been certified as halal. That doesn't mean that the ones that haven't been certified as halal are haram, but the company have not specifically certified that they're
Who's
halal.
the company? Who runs the company?
What do you mean the company?
Like the one that do the certification, is that Muslim body or not?
Yeah.
Oh, okay, wow. So if I go to the halal pharmacy and buy like a non-halal product, is that like, am I a crap Muslim?
What do you mean non-halal product? Like, we don't have stickers saying not halal.
Or like, imagine they have like individual.
You know, I never even thought of that in the first place. I never went into
a
a
lot of
pharmacy
people
before and thought, better avoid the pork tablets. You know what I mean?
Before I started working, I remember the first time someone came in and asked me, is this Panadol halal? And I kind of just was like, why wouldn't it be halal?
I mean, it's the alcohol content as well as I remember when we were doing studies of diabetes ages ago, I think the capsules had the actual capsules.
The gelatin in
of
it.
pork.
Yeah, the casing. So I think that's the issue rather than, is Panadol.
A lot of people prefer not to go
becomes
for
a
the
thick
capsules
issue.
just because they think, it may have gelatin derived from pork.
I mean, it's better safe than sorry option.
So that's why this pharmacy, I think it's a really good initiative though. Like,
Oh yeah, you work for them. Of course you're going to say that.
I don't own it, so no, but it is like.
She will get a promotion though.
I'm not sure if I was supposed to mention it or not, actually.
But it's been publicised a lot, so I can see why not.
Yeah,
everyone's
I mean,
heard about
I'm honestly just waiting for Fred Nile to come down with a banner saying no more halal medicine. They even want to, because you know what, with Korobinati, when we had you know how Steggles and Beta and stuff, well-known companies that are halal certified, the chickens and things like that, and it's like creeping Sharia, like that's how Muslims convert non-Muslims, by making them eat halal food.
How does it affect them? I don't know.
You know what though? I also think that if you're going to promote having sort of halal food products, you also need to treat your workers ethically. And I think
Sema,
some of these
underpaid.
No, I'm not talking about the pharmacy. I'm talking about some of these like chicken providers. I think that they I think halal encompasses a lot of things, including how you treat your workers.
Not even that, like I remember you know how last year with the saga that happened with the halal meat industry in terms of the live exports
exactly in Indonesia and stuff,
the hadith about how you should treat an animal before slaughter, like it's like, you have to like give them sugar, like to take care of them. You can't kill them in front of other animals, so they're not actually affected by that. You have to feed them well and things like that. And you just think, honestly, what's halal become? Is it more a commodified commercialization of the process so that they can just get money, or is it actually genuine care for what halal means and what it entails?
Well, now a lot of people sort of associate halal with cruelty to animals, and so they don't want to eat halal meat because they assume that the animals have been treated cruelly.
And a lot of restaurants or even food products like Woolies and stuff that previously had the halal stamp,
too embarrassed to put it on now because of the backlash. But you know what, a video went viral after that, that was born out of that sort of controversy where they showed a halal slaughtering, but it was such a beautifully done, and a lot of Muslims watched that and just went, wow, this is how it's supposed to be done. Unfortunately, it hasn't had the same exposure as that that ABC news story that went out and shocked everyone about the live export. But this video needs to be seen, so maybe we can pass it around on
the Y Factor page. Inshallah. All right, well, we're going to take another short break, guys. You're listening to the Y Factor on 87.6 FM.
The Y Factor.
So this is the lovebird himself, and I'm here with Lord Rathborne, and we're here to break some massive Jibba news.
That's right. All you Jibban-obsessed people out there, there is a new Jibban powerhouse.
You mean other than yourself?
That's right. True Elegance Videography, run by Ibrahim Abdu, can fulfill all your Jibban needs.
So if you need to make sure everybody at your wedding knows how much you love and cherish your husband or wife, True Elegance is the way to go.
Filming, editing, and beautifying videos specifically to be shown off at your wedding, True Elegance is key to your very own Jibban dedication.
Find him on Facebook by searching True Elegance and enjoy being showered in Jibban.
The Y Factor would like listeners to know that we're actually talking about true love and affection and not actual Jibban.
The Y Factor.
Oh dear God. Well, that's funny because they're obviously mocking Richard Mercer and his love song dedications. But there was one episode where I think some Arabs were having a bit of fun with Richard, and they made him send a dedication to Betanjana from her Kusa. So that was really good.
What was the final product at Baba Ganoush?
What was the song? Oh, yes, exactly.
All right, ladies, I think we've had a chat and a laugh about various topics. And inshallah, we're aiming maybe maybe, depending on what our listeners like and think, trialling these new episodes where it's more conversations about various topics. Now, one very, I think, pertinent issue that the Muslim community face, not just the Muslim community, I think anyone in this globalised age, right, is the issue of suffering and pain and predicaments and calamities of other people, okay?
Yeah.
And as global citizens, we feel like we have to have a role in this, right? Now, for example, Osama Cannon, when he was in Sydney, he was saying at the Pursuit of Happiness lecture that before it was activism, now it's become clicktivism, right? So we feel like if we like a status or, we share, a status or something like that, then that's it. That's our part done, right?
Yeah.
In terms of helping these people in Syria, in Palestine, in Somalia, in all parts of the world. You've got that sense. And then you've got from the other side, fundraising dinners right left and centre.
It's true.
And you're kind of sitting there gorging, you've paid $50 gorging on this really good steak, right? And then they show you pictures of Somalia and they're like, come on, donate.
All these
and
kids
you're like,
dying.
I haven't finished my salad yet. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I don't know. What are your thoughts on this? I mean, I don't think anyone, and alhamdulillah, like the community especially, I can say because I've attended a lot of these events, are genuinely generous. When it comes to giving, they do give. And you can just see it like the Syria event, the one that hosted by the youth, the MSA New South Wales. One of the boys, he looked like a very young man. They were donating auction items. He actually gave his backpack and everything that was in it. He goes, this is for charity, right?
Yeah.
What was in it though?
Oh, he actually had like
iPods, headphones.
Like it was everything. Like he didn't even open it up. He goes, whatever's in my bag, right? One of the brothers actually bought it off him. I think the auction went up to something around $1,000. And he actually gave it back to him.
That's
so
sweet.
it's actually really, really beautiful. Sisters were taking off like their Thomas Sabo bracelets, giving it in. A lot of people, taking off even like, initialed necklaces and very, very personalised items of jewellery. So I don't know. What do you guys like? What are your thoughts on this topic?
Well, I don't know. I mean, do you think the Muslim community is more generous than other people generally? I mean, I know it sounds a bit up ourselves because I was just reading an article on SMH today which was saying that apparently the rich in society, like millionaires and above, are giving less and less in charity these days. And they're talking about why, because they have every incentive to give. I mean, it's tax deductible. But for some reason, people, the wealthy in society, are just giving less and less. So
I don't know about that, but I think that with the Muslim community in particular, because we have such a strong sense of brotherhood and sisterhood with the global ummah, that we are sort of, unlike other communities who, say you're from the Chinese community, then you're pretty much focused on China, like you don't, your concerns aren't really, I mean, that's just a generalization.
And we don't really know,
you know what I mean? Like
who's donating and who's not. I mean, I know myself, I don't go to the Christianity events in churches to see how much money they're.
But I think there's so much conflict happening in the Muslim world, and there's so much suffering in particular in the Muslim world. I mean, you just look at Iraq, Syria, Chechnya, Kashmir, Palestine, Somalia. I mean, you can just go on and on and on. It's like, where do you begin? How do you help? And so I feel like there's so much despair, and some people are just like, they don't know where to begin. But you mentioned collectivism before, and I find that really interesting because with the whole Coney 2012 campaign, personally, I'm not a big fan of that, but especially military intervention. But I do. But it's funny how they had this massive campaign for everyone to go out on a particular day and campaign for what they wanted people to campaign about, and no one turned up. It was funny because nobody actually did it on the day. Yeah, hardly anybody did it. People clicked and said, "Yeah, we're going to do it," and then when it actually came to the crunch, you know what I mean?
But with Coney, that was obviously because of all the political saga that happened with his downfall and things like that of the actual founder of the organisation. But I think, I don't know, it's interesting that you say like it's more of a sense of being surrounded by activists. Yeah. So, for example, right, like with Syria, and they had the protests a couple of times this year for Syria in Martin Place, in the city, in Canberra. I mean, you can actually care for the cause at home. Yeah. You can care for the cause in a protest, screaming. Yeah. Tangibly, it doesn't really make a difference to the people there. I mean, it does raise awareness and blah, blah, blah. But I'm saying for you as a person, tangibly, it doesn't actually, it's not much of a difference. But I think just being in the ambience...
But actually, no, but in a way, I think what they try to do with protests, and I think they're being more innovative with protests now because they've realised the whole sort of slogan, banner, shouting thing is probably not as effective as, say, the new style of protest, which is flash mobs, etc. But it's basically about raising awareness and putting it on the political agenda. And And that's why people tend to go out and protest because, you know, but it's funny because at the same time, you know, some people say nobody really cares because, you know, about this topic because no one's on the street protesting. But then politicians will then turn around and flip it, like during the Iraq War 2003, when you had like 1 million people come out in Australia protesting, people were then saying, and I remember John Howard coming on 60 Minutes saying, well then, you know, that's 19 million who weren't protesting. So how do you measure, you know, the who's the majority and who's not? I mean, it either works for you or, you know, they could flip it around on you. But I do think the innovative style of protesting now that's occurring these days, which is viral, which is about creating flash mobs and things that are more interesting and innovative, and then putting it on YouTube and getting it to go viral, I think that's what people are now trying to focus their energy on because they have realised that, like you said earlier, that, you know, it's just not as effective these days anymore. There's like, oh yeah, you know, if the media don't cover it, then what was the point, you know? And a lot of these days the media doesn't want to cover it, you know?
Well, not just on charity, but just the way that things have gone viral. For example, Kamal Saleh's video. I saw the video from the event, the Final Destination event on the weekend. That already has over 100,000 views, and it's been up for 3 days.
And Yasmin Mogahed just today,
she shared it on her Facebook page.
Yeah.
And that's probably responsible for most of the views. But
yeah, it's going across America, and because you know what, it has an impact on people. And Kamal was really smart in the way that he used just the way it was filmed. He uses high quality footage. Yeah. He edits really well, and not only that, you know, having I think Rabi having him on where they wash the dead. I think just as a viewer to see that, you know, I can't even imagine what it was like for him to be on there, but for a viewer to watch it had a really profound impact. You know, I think what Kamal is doing is really smart. I mean, he really knows how to sort of pull the emotional strings of people. And so I think people just need to be smart these days. Unfortunately, people have, you know, very little attention spans, and trying to have that little window of opportunity to make an impact or to send out a message, you know, we just don't have it anymore these days. With, you know, we're in the Twitter revolution, the Facebook, you know, everyone's always busy, have their heads burrowed into their phones. I mean, people don't even look up these days at dinner parties and stuff because they're so busy, you know, trying to socially connect, which is ironic. So it's trying to capture people's attention, which unfortunately attention spans have contracted. Yeah.
Well, ladies, I think it was lovely having you on discussing everything from bugs to IV drips. Maybe that's our next discussion. Yeah. IV drips to serious topics. Listeners, let us know your feedback about this new format of the episode, inshallah. And we will be posting the links to some of the articles we did discuss on the Facebook page for further discussion. Any concluding remarks, comments, burning sensations that you want to...
2005, Pride and Prejudice beats 1995.
1995 Pride and Prejudice was far exceeded expectations. Indeed. Capital.
We'll leave it there before they kill each other on air. You're listening to The Y Factor on 87.6 FM. Stay tuned, inshallah. After this, we do speak to Zeina Harrouk, who is a teacher in relation to the NAPLAN and the hype surrounding the NAPLAN exams.
The Y Factor.
The issue of the NAPLAN test has been in the news a lot lately, and there's been a lot of controversy over whether this is the correct means of testing students. So with us today to discuss this issue is Zeina Harrouk, who is a maths teacher who was taught all grades from kindergarten to year 12. Welcome to the show, Zeina.
Yeah, thank you. Salam alaikum. It's an honor for me to be joining the Y Factor team.
The Y Factor team is very excited to have you. All right, Zeina, so NAPLAN's coming up next week. A lot of parents are under pressure. The kids are going cuckoo. And a lot of the times criticism has actually come out from teachers, academics, and students themselves and parents saying that the actual system of NAPLAN, the way it only tests under strict exam conditions, English and maths, is actually not conducive to children's learnings and things like that, okay?
Yeah.
So as a teacher, as someone who teaches and as someone who's actually been exposed to a lot of students, what's your take on the matter?
Well, I personally just want to tell you a little story about NAPLAN. NAPLAN started as a step. The Australian government wanted to nationalise the curriculum. Rather than having a syllabus just for New South Wales and one for WA, one for Queensland, they wanted to do a national curriculum, which is going to start taking effect from 2014. Therefore, that's the idea of NAPLAN, because they wanted to eliminate the differences between the states. So, for example, you have the highest achieving state at the moment is the New South Wales, and in particular Sydney. So what they wanted to do is to eliminate these differences between the different states and between Australians in the rural areas and in major urban centres. They wanted to create this national curriculum idea, and therefore the NAPLAN was a way of testing whether the level of students in the urban areas are meeting, or they're all the same.
But one of the criticisms, especially in relation to this, and this is by Laurie-Ann Wilson, who's actually been teaching since 1959.
Wow.
She's saying that all control of the education system has been taken out of educators' hands. These decisions have been made by politicians, not by teachers.
It is.
So it feels like it's a top-down approach. As you're saying, maybe the aim is noble, trying to make all the states and territories equal. However, logistically at the grassroots level, how is it operating?
Well, what I think, the way I think it's the government's put their hands on this. And like you said, they do have the upper hand, because through NAPLAN and through the results of NAPLAN, funding is distributed accordingly. Students or schools that perform better, they get the more money. And obviously those who perform less, they get less funding. Therefore, this is going to put a lot of pressure on principals and on teachers to push their kids to sometimes, pointless limits, because there's kids can perform to a certain limit. You can't keep pushing. And it's that's how affecting funding, and it's affecting teachers, and it's affecting the quality of teaching in classrooms.
I think also one of the major criticisms of the NAPLAN is the fact that it focuses on exam condition testing, especially in relation to English and maths. A lot of the criticisms have been that it takes creativity out of students. Students are not taught to be creative, to be imaginative,
and
to
not only
that,
it's the focus of NAPLAN is on just a small part of what a student is. Not everybody is born to be a maths genius or a creative writer. What they're doing is that when they test a student on just maths, on their numeracy and their literacy skills, they're not seeing the creative side of the student. They're not seeing the scientific students. They're not seeing all these other aspects that makes a person. They're just focusing on the skills, which I'm not saying they're not important. They are, but it does not reflect a holistic picture of what a student is. And I think it's a shame, because we really should be focusing on the students as a whole. And as a teacher, I deal with these things on a day-to-day basis, and for me to say, okay, my student, for example, failed a maths exam, doesn't make him a bad person or doesn't make him a terrible mathematician. You know what I mean? It's not adequate. It's just not fair for the students as well. And also the thing with NAPLAN is, like you said about exam conditions, you performing at a certain day, at a certain time, a specific day. If you, that morning, for example, you were late to school, your son is more likely to underperform because of the stress of being late. If your son, for example, the night before, or you had family circumstances, or whatever it may be, because we all have our own family circumstances, and the next day he had to do, or she had to do the NAPLAN exam, how are they going to perform to their best of their abilities? I mean, there's a lot of human conditions and a lot of human,
factors that are not taken into
exactly. So
but a lot of people would argue that Australia is already lagging behind in terms of its numeracy, and I mean not so much literacy, but especially numeracy. In maths, we're actually lagging behind.
Yes.
In terms of like Asia, when you compare the geographic area that we're in, we're lagging behind, and so I think that the NAPLAN, people would say it's a response to that, and sometimes drastic action is needed in terms of that.
But my response to that would be, if we're lagging behind in numeracy or literacy, does more testing going to solve the problem? That's the thing. We got to think. The education system's got to think. There's people who are responsible for the educational system. Got to sit down and really think about what they can do to lift up the performance of students. Students need a lot of motivation. I've taught a public system and I've taught in a private schools. Private schools, it's obvious. Your parents are paying money. You got to do it. In a public system, you will find, and I'm not undermining the public system, but you will find there's a lot of students who underperform. They're not motivated enough. There's way too many distractions. Unfortunately, sometimes from what I've encountered, also teachers who just simply don't care because there's many factors that affect the performance of students, and the government knows responsible for the education system really need to sit down and think about how to help the students. More testing is definitely not the answer.
So what would you say would be an effective way of bringing for example, our numeracy performance in Australia up to the scratch of our global competitors?
I think that's a very good question, and that's what all teachers, not just the maths teachers, but literacy teachers and numeracy, the music teachers, the art teachers, the geography teachers, and all of them teachers need to sit down and think about how to encourage students, get them engaged in the classroom, get them motivated, so the student comes to school willing to learn. You got that. That's it. If you plant this seed inside every single child that you teach, you've done your job, because you practically have every child for about a year, and then you hand them over to someone else. So you need to keep feeding that seed. You need to give it you need to give them the encouragement. Yes, you can do it. Because as kids they might stop believing in themselves. They might not find this point. How is that related to my life? How is algebra is going to help me in life? They might not see it, but your job as a teacher,
long-term cultivation and preparation rather than
absolutely
cultivation for that one exam where they sit down and
And it's also for long life learning. Long life learning, the love for learning, the love to sit down and absorb this knowledge and look at the world and wonder.
Yeah, but then how you mentioned about public schools and sometimes the teachers may not necessarily be that motivated themselves, but people might argue that the NAPLAN is kind of a means for holding them accountable and in check. They are doing all the necessary things that they need to be doing, at least the basic minimum. Do you think that's true?
Look, I'm a teacher, and I'm not obviously to speak on behalf of all teachers. However, what I think is if you're motivated enough to become a teacher, you got to have this mindset that it's your job to prepare these kids for whatever they may encounter in their future. Whether it is NAPLAN, whether it is their, Year 12, and now that they've scraped the, the Year 10 certificate, the high school certificate, whether they're going to go for a job interview, it is your job as a teacher to train the kids, to give them this confidence about themselves and their capabilities and what they can do. This is what I believe anyway. So, yeah.
So having a system, you don't think would actually make these teachers more motivated if they're lacking motivation in
Well, what the government is doing at the moment is they're directing their motivating through, cash. So, your students will perform. We promise you we're going to pump your school with some extra money. But I think that doesn't work. That's not going to work with everybody. Like realistically speaking, it's not going to work with everyone. Yeah.
Well, you raised some really interesting issues here. And, yeah, it was a great discussion. And, yeah, there's no right or wrong answer on this issue. I guess it just comes down to a matter of personal opinion. And in the long term, we'll see how this will plan out.
Yeah, and I hope for the sake of our kids and our kids' kids that someone will really and deeply think about this in a way that, change the way we educate our children, because we really, really need to focus on the student as a whole person, not just whether they can spell or not.
All the statistics they can actually get to school and to get more funding.
Yeah, that's what it comes down to.
Yep. Zeina, thank you so much for joining us, and we look forward to speaking to you in the future.
Thank you for having me.
The Y Factor.
البدر كطلعته وجه جميل والشمس كبسمته ظل ظليل هو عبد الله سيد الخلق ومصطفاه وحبيب الله خير مبعوث بوحي الله مولاي صل وسلم دائما أبدا على حبيبك خير الخلق كلهم مولاي.
In upcoming events, UTS-MS Charity Week is on this week from May the 7th until May the 11th. And they have some amazing features, including an adult-sized jumping castle and a sumo wrestling fight, which will be taking place on May the 18th. But this does have a serious purpose behind it. It's to remind people about charity, and each day actually has a different charity which it will be fundraising for. So, for example, on May the 8th, it's the Breast Cancer Foundation, and every day has different charities, so get behind it.
International guest Yusha Evans is actually in town, brought by IDCA. Inshallah, he will be having a lecture this Friday, the 11th of May, called A Transaction with Allah at Masjid Abu Bakr Siddiq, 361 Chisholm Road, Auburn. That's at 7 p.m. He will also be having his major dinner, the Build a Mosque dinner, which is Friday the 18th of May, and that will be held at the Emporium. Tickets are $50. So if you're interested, you can contact IDCA, inshallah, or you can actually visit their website, idca.org.au.
Now, Al Kawthar have another course in their series of courses on Saturday, May the 12th, 2012, starting at 8:30 a.m. And this course is called the Victorious One, Sirah, the Medinan Period. And so if you're interested, head to the Al Kawthar website to enroll.
UWS Parramatta, the Muslim Society, is having a lecture entitled Al-Quran, the Timeless Truth. There are two talks: the text of the Quran, a miraculous revelation by Ustad Rian. I really cannot say his last name. Okay, and the talk two is Quran Today, Tomorrow and Beyond, Our Eternal Guide by Brother Muhammad Trad from the University of Western Sydney. Ustad Rian is actually a graduate of Medina University. There will also be special Quran recitations. So if you're interested, inshallah, that's May the 12th at 6:30 p.m. at the University of Western Sydney, Bankstown. Lecture 23, Theatre 4 in Milpera.
And on Sunday, May the 13th, the World Orphan Fund is having a soccer gala day, and that'll be running from 8 a.m. to 3 p.m. at Webbs Avenue Reserve, Auburn. So it's 6 to 9 players per team, and each match goes for 22 minutes. And the prize costs $200 per team, and prizes will be announced on the day. And this event is for brothers only. So again, Webbs Avenue Reserve, Auburn, Sunday, May the 13th, 8 a.m. until 4 p.m. If you want to register, contact one of the volunteers, Yusuf Abu Rashid, on 0416 348 727, or Faisal Merhab on 0414 747 474. All
right, I think that brings us pretty much to the end of the episode for this week. as you must have realised by now that we did try a different format, so just moving away from the newsy, discussion-y, current affairs style for a week. So we might be having this every couple of episodes depending on what our listeners and audience like. So do let us know your thoughts, inshallah. You can Facebook us at the Y Factor 87.6 FM, the group. You can also email us at theyfactor@live.com.au. Our awesome, brilliant website just went up, and that's www.yfactor876.com or yfactor876.org. We've also got the pictures in our gallery page from the launch, so if you want to check yourself out, head on there. Inshallah, all the events that we did mention will be in our event calendar on the website, so we're pretty excited about that. So let us know your thoughts, inshallah. So that's pretty much it for this week. Let us know your thoughts about our awesome presenters this week as Fahmi and Sema Saeed. Once again, we'd like to thank them for coming on. And that's it. So from the Y Factor team, we'd like to wish you a happy, awesome week. We'd like to wish the mothers a happy Mother's Day this weekend, inshallah. I know, astaghfirullah. Every day is Mother's Day, let's just say that. And inshallah, yeah, so we look forward to hearing from you guys and catching up with you on the Facebook page. And with that, we'll leave it. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh.
He steps and reaches to touch this man who suffered so much. His own troubles could not compare to the prophet's gone everywhere. He was shunned away by his own kin, ridiculed and stoned by the townsmen. His blood was shed for the truth, but never was he vengeful.